Alan Dershowitz is lying to you about what the people who wrote the Constitution believed with regard to impeachment. Check it out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. I think it's NBC News. It might be somebody else has dug up this, this quote from 1998. Alan Dershowitz, this was during the Clinton impeachment. Alan Dershowitz saying about whether or not a president has to have committed an actual crime to be impeached. Because, you know, having sex with an intern isn't a crime. Lying about it under oath is, but is that an impeachable crime? Well, the Senate didn't think so, but the House did. But here's what Alan Dershowitz said in 1998. It certainly doesn't have to be a crime if you have somebody who completely corrupts the office of president and who abuses trust and who poses great danger to our liberty. You don't need a technical crime. That was August 24th, 1998. And then, of course, over the weekend, you couldn't turn on a TV without seeing Alan Dershowitz. It was like, regardless of channel, regardless of time, I am so sick of seeing this man's face. And, you know, this is just one of his quotes. Abuse of power, even if proved, is not an impeachable offense. The framers didn't want to give Congress the authority to remove a president because he abused his power. You have to prove crimes and misdemeanors. Well, let's see what the founders actually said about this. This is from James Madison's notes on the Constitutional Convention. Mr. Pinckney observed that the president ought not to be impeachable while in office. Mr. Davey then stands up and says if he's not impeachable while in office, he'll spare no effort or means whatever to get himself reelected. He considered this an essential security, impeachment, for the good behavior of the president. Colonel Mason, no point is of more importance than that the right of the impeachment should be continued. Shall a man who has practiced corruption, and by that means procured his appointment to the presidency, be suffered to escape punishment by repeating his guilt? Ben Franklin, Dr. Franklin was for retaining the impeachment clause as favorable to the executive. Ben Franklin pointed out what was the practice before this, before the possibility of impeachment, in cases where the chief magistrate rendered himself obnoxious. Why? Recourse was had to assassination, as Ben Franklin said. Franklin says impeachment is a much better way. It would be the best way, therefore, to provide in the Constitution for the regular punishment of the executive where his misconduct should deserve it, and for his honorable acquittal where he should be unjustly accused. Governor Morris admits corruption and other offenses should be impeachable. James Madison thought it indispensable that some provision should be made for defending the community against the perfidy or negligence of a chief magistrate, of a president. He might pervert his administration, Madison said, into a scheme of peculation. Peculation is when you make yourself wealthy through public money. Madison thought this was an impeachable offense. He might pervert his administration into a scheme of peculation or oppression. Eldridge Gerry, the guy that we named, the gerrymander is named after, urged the necessity of impeachment. A good magistrate will not fear them. A good president will not fear them. A bad one ought to be kept in fear of them. And it goes on, Mr. Randolph, wherever found, if he's guilty, he ought to be punished. The executive, the president, will have great opportunities of abusing his power, particularly in time of war, when the military force, and in some respects the public money, will be in his hands. Are we thinking about $400 million for Ukraine here? Should no regular punishments be provided, it will be irregularly inflicted by tumults and insurrections. So we must have an impeachment. Franklin comes back to, he talks about the Prince of Orange, who led his country into a war. Had he been impeachable, a regular and peaceable inquiry would have taken place, and he would, if guilty, have been duly punished. If innocent, restored to the confidence of the public. So the founders were quite clear that impeachment did not require a crime. And by the way, there were no federal crimes when the Constitution was ratified.